Okie dokie. Talk about joys of all joys. I have the privilege for this webinar and podcast to have a hero of mine, not just a one of many heroes, but the hero of mine that became a hero since the very first day I met him. And Mr. Todd Wright. And Todd, I can't tell you how excited I am. You know, we almost have to grin because we know sometimes we're pulling each other's chain, but this is for me an honor to get you on tape and as good as looking as you're looking, and just to have the opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, no, I'm excited, Gary. Obviously, anytime I'm with you, there's a special energy, and you've been an incredible friend, an incredible mentor that has changed my life. It's hard for me to actually put words to what your influence has meant on me and the people that I've been lucky enough to help since I've met you.
Yeah, well, you've helped a lot of people, and that's the real blessing. I think we could summarize our relationship by saying we have a nickname for each other, and it's the same nickname. It's Brother Love. You know,
I
so
love.
all of a sudden I get a voicemail or something, and all of a sudden, Brother Love. It's like, oh my goodness, this is the greatest thing in the world, and there's a lot of truth to that. You know how
That's
much I
gone
love.
on for a lot of years. Yeah.
So I know I'm like a lot of people. I just like to know people's journey, and just get an idea of kind of what got you started in all this, and kind of where have you been, and then we can dig deeper. But you've been on a beautiful journey, and I think people would love to know just kind of where you got started and kind of how you got ended up to where you are. Actually, let's go a little bit backwards. I think it's just a beautiful lady just walked by the computer there. So we might, if we want to upgrade this webinar, we'll bring her in. Uh, but let's go backwards a little bit. Let's start where you are right now. Just share with us, where you are, what you're doing now, and let's go from there.
Sure. Right now, I've just entered my sixth season with the Los Angeles Clippers as the vice president of player performance. Prior to that, I spent 4 seasons with the Philadelphia 76ers. So this would be my 11th year in the NBA. And then prior to that, I was really fortunate enough to be with a great coach for 21 years in college basketball named Rick Barnes. So 4 of those were at Clemson University, 17 were at the University of Texas. And there was a stretch that I think I was leaving Clemson. I was a young coach, and I had just taken the Texas job. And when I entered the Texas job, we had a lot of guys with a lot of issues, patella issues, osteitis, pubitis, shoulders. And the one thing that I realized real quickly at that time is that I probably didn't have a toolbox to be able to really understand how to close the gap in those with those injuries. And so I started searching out, physical therapists that maybe were more on the performance side, and something that maybe I could understand. And someone had told me about chain reaction, a course that you put on, and I think my first course that I took was in 1998. We were in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went into that seminar, there wasn't a lot of strength coaches in that seminar, and there were a lot of physical therapists. And when you started to talk, I was pulled in. I was super curious on how to. I knew there was something to it, but I was overwhelmed. But I knew that it was probably the truth. And so every year after that chain reaction, I took chain reaction again, and I took chain reaction almost 6 or 7 years after that. And I met you in Chicago. I did Boston. I did somewhere on the West Coast, and every time I took a little bit more and a little bit more, and I started to understand a little bit. But my worlds kind of collided when I was, maybe in my early 30s, and I had a couple great players, but great players that were hurt, and I couldn't quite understand why they were hurt. And I probably have 4 or 5 of those athletes that you helped me directly with, that when you share with me and really taught me the principles of human movement, you gave me a blueprint of a thought process on how to look at the human body. And it was so outside of what I had learned traditionally that was a little scary at first. But when I started to create solutions for these players and take away their pain, um, it was hard to deny the results. And that happened. I mean, I have so many stories on that end, but the one big one was I flew a player to you named James Thomas.
Mhm.
And you guys were doing another chain reaction in Colorado. We had a great team at the University of Texas, and he was having a low back issue. And I flew him in, and you and Dave were really nice enough to let us fly in and kind of interrupt the seminar one night. And I remember you asked James to take his shirt off, and then take his shoes off. And I was really confused by the shoes piece.
Mhm.
And he started to walk, and there was a normal pattern that James had, was his right arm didn't swing when he walked, and nor did it swing when he ran.
Mhm.
And you share with me, you said, Todd, look at his left subtalar joint. And I was a little frustrated at the time because, I had been going at this trying to stabilize his spine, and a lot of bridging, a lot of, um, and I said, Gary, you don't get it. His back hurts. And when you looked at me, I could tell I don't get it. And I said, you're telling me that foot is causing his back? He said, yes. And I said, well, will you teach me that? And you said, absolutely, I'll teach you that. And then that's when I started to really dive into chain reaction biomechanics. And you taught me how to mobilize that foot, that rear foot. And we actually had to build a special orthotic to pitch that calcaneus a little bit to get some more eversion out of it. But instantly, when we did that, that left front hip let go. And I was able to get that kid to start running with that right arm again. And
Mhm.
something that I had struggled to fix for almost 8 months, I had cleaned up in 4 to 6 weeks. We were lucky. We went on to the Final Four that year and lost to Carmelo Anthony, but that player actually went on to break the all-time leading rebounding record in Texas history. So there was one there, and then shortly after that, I got a great player out of high school that had a spondylolisthesis, and because of what you taught me with that particular player, I went in and examined the foot, and we found a bunion on the right foot that was really locked and just didn't have any dorsiflexion in it at all. And you taught me how to mold that one, and sure enough, that kid had felt pain for over a year. He we had cleaned up in almost 6 to 8 weeks, and he went on to become an All-American and a top 5 pick in the NBA draft.
Mhm.
So these stories all start to come in as I'm taking in all this knowledge from Gift and yourself, right? Like as I'm learning from, well, at that time we were just doing chain reactions. And so I was trying to drill down to chain reaction stuff. And then all of a sudden you did Gift in 2007. And then I was lucky before that, though, that you allowed me in to bring these players to you and to show you these players. And so I started getting this 1,000-foot view of chain reaction biomechanics and how the body really works, and the authentic environments that using ground reaction and mass momentum of the body, and overcoming gravity. You started talking about proprioceptors. I was lost, and then I just continually just kept chipping away at the proprioceptor piece and understanding them, and how to train them authentically. And a lot of the things I was learning was kind of clashing with some of the traditional views of how training was looked at.
Mhm.
The great part for me was I didn't really have a boss that I had to report to. So I had an opportunity that I came to a threshold that either I changed and I went away from a lot of the traditional view, or I responded and respected the results that we were creating with some of these players. And should I start to train differently?
Mhm.
And that was pretty amazing for me at a young age. I was in my early 30s. Um, and then I was learning all this stuff from you, and I had this intern group. And so at the University of Texas, I had a large intern group of like 5 guys. And we were finding a niche in low back pain because of you. Like, we were helping people cure their low back pain. And someone came to me and said, "Hey, would you have interest in meeting this guy? This guy, he's about to go in for back surgery. They're going to fuse L4, L5. Would you take a peek at him?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So he came in, and I asked him when he's with us, I said, "Hey, Tom, have you ever hurt anything in your lower legs?" And he goes, "Well, actually, I was in a bad horse accident, 2.5 years ago." And I said, "Can you tell me about it?" He said, "Yeah, a horse reared up, fell on his side, and I had a compound fracture of my tib fib." So I said, "Oh," I said, "Could I look at it?" He said, "Yeah." So when I looked at it, you could see that the leg was a little bit short, whether the bones, had healed that way or whatever. But the ankle on that side it was almost fused, like it was stuck. So I started to wiggle on his ankle, and he said, "Tom, it's actually my back." And I said, "Yeah, you know what?" I said, "I actually know why you're thinking that way." I said, "Look, I've been learning this stuff from a great physical therapist in Michigan for the last 4 or 5 years. His name's Gary Gray. And he's taught me how to look a little differently. Do you care if I play with this foot a little bit?" He's like, "Do you think it'll help my back?" I said, "I don't know, but I
Mhm.
think there's a chance, maybe." So we start working out in the mornings, and before all the guys come in, and he starts getting some motion in that foot, and we start putting him in little transformational zones of walking and getting the hip to extend. And next thing you know, his back is feeling, he goes, "Tom, my back's really feeling better." I said, "That's great." And he goes, "Would you ever decide to open a business?" And I said, "You know what? I don't think so, man." I said, I don't want to bother other people's money. And, and he saw these 5 interns. He would come into the gym, and they would always be around watching as we were doing things.
Mhm.
And he goes, "Well, look, I own these buildings over on the west side of Austin. Why don't you open the business, and I'll give you the space for free, and you just treat me for a little bit because I feel so good."
Mhm.
So I'm like,
Pretty good deal.
that's a tough one to turn down. So that is Train for the Game. And so Train for the Game is a business, a performance restoration and fitness facility in Austin, Texas, that we have had for 21, believe it or not, it's 21 years now.
Wow.
Uh, yeah. And so that business is continually grown, and it's all based off of applied functional science. And we have 3 different markets. One that's a fitness market that's all three-dimensionally driven. Then we have a performance market that's really focused on the athletic development. And then we have a restoration market, which has been our big niche in helping people get through pain, because of what you've taught us. And so they come in and maybe haven't been able to find solutions, and we help their knee feel better, their low back or their shoulder. And so that business has been in existence for 21 years because of what we learned from you. And, almost everybody on my staff at the Clippers is gift certified. I
Yep.
think there's probably 14 people. And then there's a large majority at Train for the Game that are all also gift certified. Um, so you could see the impact just in the short part of the story that I've shared with you. Um, Without the skill sets that I've learned from yourself, Davey, and Dougie, in applied functional science, I wouldn't be sitting in the seat that I'm actually in today, which is, who would have ever thought that you could get a vice president's role as a strength coach? But because I was able to see the world a little different, and added value to help and protect some of those players, and um, it was recognized. So I can't thank you and the organization enough for what you've not only given me, but so many people. I just feel blessed that I've been able to extract the knowledge from you, but we've become just absolutely incredible friends through the journey.
What and this is always a hard one to answer, but something was inside your brain, your heart, your spirit when you got out of school, and then you kind of started scratching your head and says there might be more. You know, and what I know now is good, and but I think I might be missing maybe a little piece of something. To have the courage to say, well, I'm just going to go to this other seminar. And by the way, you were the only strength coach there. Uh, and and
Yeah.
uh, and say, hey, my job is to get people to move better. And a lot of them have pain and dysfunction and stuff. And if I want them to be really good on the basketball court or whatever, especially in just their daily life, I think I might want to learn some more stuff. What, how did you, what was inside you that obviously is not inside everybody, but what do you think that is?
Um, I fell in love with training in college, and so I played a little Division II football, and my last couple years, as I started to train, um, I had this um, I had this large emotional growth, where I felt good. For the first time as a young adult, I felt good about how hard I was working and how exponentially it was it was helping me understand the most important things in life. And I was doing that through physical transformation, which you ended up giving me that phrase after I met you. Um, and I always loved helping people. And I was really good at communicating with guys, and I could get guys to work really, really hard. Um, but sometimes it just it didn't make sense to me why we would do particular things, you know? And so I, every year I was lucky to work for a guy that said, Todd, where are you going to get better?
Hmm.
And I would, every year I would go to, excuse me one second. Let me just, I just got to shut these devices down because they're
Problem.
blowing up right now. Every year I got to go learn like 3 or 4 different places.
Mhm.
And I think right before I met you, I went to a Vern Gambetta's Rebuilding and Building the Complete Athlete.
Yeah,
And,
very good.
and you and Vern obviously had some times where your roads had crossed. And so I had I had really enjoyed that course, but then when I took the first chain reaction seminar, I could see the similar influences, and that really started to hook me a little bit. Where um, I was just really curious on how to continually make the human body better, and I knew though, like I was big and strong. I mean, when I first met you, I was really fit, and but I was in pain. Like my back hurt, and I at that time I was working with a professional golfer, right, at that first seminar. And he had some issues, and he's a really good golfer. He's a famous golfer. And I had asked you, I said, Gary, he's having an elbow problem. And you actually, taught me to how to search into that same side hip and the thoracic spine, and can he mold the pec on the right side? And I was like, what are you talking about? Like this, it was so over my ability to see that. But I was like, it made sense to me. I was like, and when I would go to work with that golfer and work on those things, we cleared the elbow up,
Mhm.
and so now I was knee deep. I was like, all right, it's one thing if it works for one person, but this has just worked for 3 players that are super talented. They're at the top of the food chain with what they do.
Mhm.
And I'm like, it was just hard to deny. Like, but it was conflicting, right? Because obviously you learn a particular way through the regular learning, and you get out and there's your first couple influences in the business that they do things a particular way. But like watching football teams power clean, and where guys are just buckled sideways, and it was just all about load and box squats with just 600 pounds on your back. I was like, it just there was things there that just didn't quite make sense to me.
Mhm.
um but the part that really made me search you out was, I got one other story, which it's a hard story for me because it was a a young man on I was our second or third year at Texas, and he had a low back problem the night before we were playing the University of Utah. And I was in his room and I was stretching him and I was massaging him and I could convince people that they were all right. But as I was working on this kid, I realized I used the analogy, you know, that you hear something wrong under the hood of your car and you open the hood up and you pretend that you're a mechanic and you wiggle on the spark plug and like you check the dipstick, but really you don't know what you're doing because you don't know the engine. So
Mhm.
just close it down. That's what I really felt like. And I was convinced this kid, he felt great and he was going to be all right. And the next day he went for an alley-oop and he was rotating back to catch the ball and he landed on the side of someone's foot and he ruptured his ACL. It was devastating to me as a coach at that point in time in my career that I felt like I let this player down because I really didn't know what I didn't know. And at that moment, I knew that I wanted to be a guy that could lift the hood and could say, all right, there's the carburetor. The carburetor could be affecting, how the pistons are working, or I wanted that knowledge. And that's when Gift came around in 2007. And that was just, it was, it was chain reaction, just net positive. Like it was just massive for me. And truth be known, after 2007, a lot of great things started to happen because my knowledge of this topic started to actually sit in, you know?
What's and you've experienced this as well. You've coached so many people, and you get joy in seeing, you've mentored other strength coaches and movement professionals and therapists and personal trainers. And when you see them go on and just do some amazing things, obviously that's what gives us a lot of joy. You also have the privilege of seeing athletes at all levels, the superstar level, all the way down to, my level, so to speak. And it just brings you, it's hard. I think most people out there listening right now understand that. But I don't think I've ever told you this story. You gave me the opportunity about 6 or 7 years ago to hang out with you for a month while you were with one of the teams. And I'll tell you what, I was beyond a proud papa, but I was also humbled because I'm saying, man, this guy's doing it better than what I would have done it. I never thought of that. Look at this. Oh my goodness, that's incredible. I did that for a whole month. And then I just realized, what a blessing it is to hand the baton to somebody and then somebody take that baton like you have done and just make it better. And that was I look back upon that month as one of my favorite months ever, just because I
A
got
great
the
month.
from you. Um, and what's also interesting is you've said this phrase a few times, and I explain it a little bit. We were able to clear it. I love that phrase. We were able to clear it, and you actually have manual therapy skills beyond comprehension. I've seen you do magic with your hands, and I've magically seen people all of a sudden move 10 times better in less than 5 minutes. What what's the giftedness of that? What if you were going to tell somebody, try to describe to somebody who's looking over your shoulder and said, "Holy moly, what the heck are you doing? And why are you doing that? And why does that work so well?" What would you tell them?
Well, this is another great story that you and I put together, right? I'll always remember James Thomas, and you were showing me how to mold the foot, and that was the first time that you had showed me how to do those things. And I said, Gary, it's like, man, I don't know, this might be above what I'm capable of doing. And you said, why? And I said, I don't know. And you said, do you have someone else in the organization that knows how to do it? And I said, no. And you said, then that athlete's not going to change. And you, at that moment, I knew I needed, if I didn't have what was under the roof to be able to accomplish that skill set, I needed to learn it. And you were really kind to work on me directly so I could feel how much pressure you could actually put into the foot. right?
Mhm.
Like I remember the first couple times I touched it, and you're like, no, like you have to mimic ground reaction forces. You know how hard you could, get into certain parts of this foot, and you taught me how to, mobilize the subtalar joint and the mid-tarsal joint, and then, get to the first ray and how to mobilize those things, and the foot became a major focus on how athletes entered into our program, which I had never looked at anybody's feet. And still to this day, it's the first thing that we do.
Mhm.
Um, I've been lucky over the years as in Texas, I did a lot of the manual therapies. And then in Philadelphia, I did them for a pretty good amount of time. And then we hired some staff members that had those skill sets. So I was able to move those off. And then when we got to, the Clippers, everybody went through gift.
Right.
So everybody knows how to do FMR. Everybody knows how to do the manual mobilizations. And so I'll ask the therapist, hey, can I get a wig just so we could banter
Right.
back and forth, you
Yeah.
know? But that's how the manual piece started. And I was conflicted at first on should I do this? And you just said, look, if you don't have someone in your organization that does know how to do it, this athlete's going to stay the same. And that was non-negotiable for me. That made it so easy for me to say, I need to learn this.
Yep.
Um, and then, that's the not only the manual mobilizations, but the soft tissue techniques were massive in helping people transform, dysfunction that they had had for long periods of time.
Yep.
And then how to take that after you change it with the manual mobilizations, actually put it into three-dimensional movement that the body starts to groove the motor patterns and coordinate the motor patterns that the foot, the knee, the hip, they all start to integrate with each other. And as you told me those things, then I just was able to think about fundamental movements on how to prepare particular people for particular sport.
Right.
Hence train for the game,
Right.
right? That every movement's a little different, but can you evaluate the movements, um, by joint, foot, hip, thoracic spine, shoulders, neck. Um, can you do it you taught me the spectrum of local to global, right? Can I lay you down on a table and can I get into the foot and locally, can my hands feel the difference between right and left and what's dysfunctional? And so we started to create these evaluation systems that went from local to global. You would get on the table, we would examine the foot, the rear foot, the mid-tarsal joint, the forefoot, the four ways, the four movements to the hip: extension, flexion, ab and adduction, internal rotation, external rotation, six different movements. But I would examine four quadrants to the hip: the front, lateral, the medial, and the back hip. And then look up to the thoracic spine and the shoulder joint. Do you have extension, flexion? Do you have ab and adduction? And can you rotate through the spine? And very rarely do you find a person that's clean in every single one of those
Right.
movements. It's just a
Right.
matter of, is it dysfunctional? Does it cause pain? And if it does, then I would probably attack those areas. If it doesn't, I would still try to attack some of the issues as long as it didn't really compromise the skill set at which they wanted to execute in their sport.
Yeah. I hope you know how much a joy it is to hear somebody describe what I've been trying to describe for 50 years, describe it better. You just have that gift. Obviously you're a great storyteller and you're charming, but it's a joy for me I mean, I'm an older guy and the reason I get that grin on my face while you're talking, is just that, man, it's an honor to hear you talk about that. You mentioned something earlier on that I really think is critical for those listening. And that is going from what a lot of us are taught as strength coaches, as athletic trainers, as physical therapists of techniques, to then be encouraged to say, well, the techniques will come, but you first of all got to understand the principles, or as you properly put it, a thought process. And I don't know about you, but that scares me too. I'd rather have a piece of paper and say, somebody, if you got this, you do that and that and that. And okay, if that didn't work, well, that's the paper's fault and can't be my fault. So it's kind of scary, but tell me how you overcame the fear, because that's the biggest thing. I think a lot of people have to go like, man, I'm not sure if I want to dig that deep under the hood. You know, I kind of like just wiggling the little dipstick and praying that something happens. But
Right. Right.
what would you tell people to get over that fear?
Well, first of all, you're very humble in how you talk about yourself because you're probably the best teacher that I've actually ever been around in my life. And so being in an environment that isn't intimidating, that's open, that it's safe to be able to ask questions. I already had some humility to myself early on in my career that I wasn't afraid to ask questions. That I always use the phrase, I knew what I know what I don't know. I know what I know and I know what I don't know, but I really want to know what I don't know.
I love
And
it.
so there are moments in time where that first chain reaction, everybody knows this famous story. You started talking about the subtalar joint. And, to this day in gift, is you could hear the story roll through. I raised my hand and I asked where the subtalar joint was. That was a very elementary question for the majority of the people in that room. Um, but it wasn't for me. And so, and you were so kind and so how you handled that question, and I could feel the room look at me like, are you kidding me right now? And I was like, yeah, no, I actually really don't know what it is. And I think if you could encourage young people, because I think there's a lot of young people um, that'll sit and listen and they won't ask that question. But what I learned quickly was if I didn't ask the question that time, I was going to have to wait till the next time to ask it again. And you
Mm.
might not get the next time to ask it again. Every year, I would take more and more from chain reaction, and I would have more questions at the end. I would always write what I learned and then write what I didn't know, and I would go back the following year. And then we became friends a little bit where I could get on the phone and I could call you. And in that span of 4 or 5 years, I just happened to have these relationships with, you know, people that were really, really elite at what they did. In From professional golf to CEOs to, real estate owners to lottery picks in the NBA draft. And each time though, it wasn't like we were failing. We were finding solutions.
Mhm.
And so I just have more and more questions for you. And here's the best part about applied functional science is no matter how long you do it, you're never going to know it all.
Oh,
It's
amen.
it's a never-ending resource. The amount of educational material that you guys have put together that's offered through this course at any particular time, if I have a hip issue, if I have a knee issue, I can go back in and rewatch that content that helps me exponentially not only interact with my staff and the therapists, but also find analogies to be able to interact directly with the athlete. And so what gifts really allow me to do is to it's given me a communication platform to be able to talk to the highest level practitioner and medical um, in the business, to a performance area that maybe doesn't have as much background in functional anatomy and chain reaction biomechanics, and be able to deliver to the athlete.
Right.
um, but deliver those messages in a logical framework that um, that is differentiated. It's definitely differentiated from what the traditional conversations would be. And a lot of those conversations have, promoted a lot of growth within the programs that I've been associated with.
Yep.
So long way around to say I was humble enough to ask the question, but gift is an environment that is super safe. And it allowed me, because of your leadership and everybody else underneath you, that's how everybody
Yeah.
it's a safe, there's no question. If I could attach one thing to gift, no question is elementary.
Yeah.
You guys are so amazing at handling every question.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that greatly. I think everybody by now, if they didn't know you before, they'd go, well, of course Gary loves this guy. I mean, this guy's awesome. Could you do me a big favor and just share with those listening about your family? Just I
Yeah.
think
Yep.
you would enjoy.
Um, Obviously you've been really lucky to spend time with my family at my house. And
Yep.
I married an amazing human being who's absolutely gorgeous. And we've been married 29 years. Her name is Kate. And we had three beautiful children. We had our oldest daughter, Hannah, our middle daughter, Abigail, and my son, Chance. And really, they've been my major support system through all of this. As I learned these skills from you, those skill sets allowed us as a family to have some significant opportunity. But with that opportunity can come pretty scary stuff. And picking up and moving, leaving your friends, starting everything over by yourself, and it's been amazing how we've done it together. And they're everything to me. They're my rock. Um, but I'm really proud of the scary things that they've gone through to help support their dad and give their dad an opportunity to reach for the reach for the stars. And we've brought them into every conversation on every move that we've made, and it's really brought us closer together. But my wife has done an incredible job doing the lion's share of the work, raising. The thing I'm most proud of is my family and my marriage to my wife. Um, as a lot of people know that have been married for a long time, it's a great accomplishment to be married 29 years and still absolutely adore each other and chase each other all over the place. And my all three of my children, I'm exceptionally proud of how they're contributing to society.
Yeah. Well, it's another thing I've learned from you is, and I've enjoyed this, is people hear you say that and they go, wow, that's incredible that he'd be talking about his family that way. But you quite often take time to tell them that. I mean, I've heard you uh, even when I'm around, just tell Kate what an amazing lady she is. And I've seen you deal with your kids and just how you've loved on them. And it's like, whoa, yeah, I know you feel that way, but to actually take the time and articulate it and speak to their heart and just let them know how much they mean to you, that's a big deal. I mean, if if people are still listening and they don't quite want to understand anything else we've said, boy, if we could just understand to take the time to just let those who have loved us for so long and how much we love them, just to take the time to tell them that is big time, really big
So
time.
I appreciate your nice words. I try to do it as often as I can, but whenever I have the opportunity to speak, it's one of the first things I always start out with. There's always a picture of my entire family. I don't think I've ever done a talk that it hasn't been involved in. And it's just because they've sacrificed a lot for myself, my career, in the growth of our family. They've
Yep.
done a lot of scary things that have been, you know, large growth opportunities for all of them, and they've all come out on the other side. But I appreciate your nice words on how I try to recognize them as much as possible.
Yeah. The other thing I'm very thankful for is how much other people admire you and recognize your abilities. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that have taken your journey and end up being the vice president of an NBA team. That's like, wow, what an honor that is. But it just talks to how much people respect you and love you and appreciate all that you have done and all that you're doing and all the obviously the anticipation of what you are going to do. So for someone like me, I just look back and go, man, it's just really cool that you're being recognized for that. That means a lot. So uh,
Well, it means a lot coming from you. I appreciate that good compliment.
well, we could, the good news is people who know us, they know we could jibber jabber on forever. And
Forever.
this has been a blessing to me. I know that anybody listening to this is also would say, wow, that's to get to know Todd better and to know what what's deep in his heart and what's in his mind, is huge. And, so biggest thing I think I might want to ask you is if we could do this again. I mean, we can go every different angle. You got more stories than, people have, and people love stories, and people love stories from people they love and respect. So, I guess my biggest thing besides telling you thank you for making this so special is that maybe we can commit to doing this again and be able to share our hearts with other people again.
And you know this, I would do anything for you, and I would do anything for the people that are associated with Gift. That's the impact that you guys have had on me. I feel blessed on the knowledge that you've shared with me, but more important than any of that, just how our friendship has evolved me as a human being and a man and a practitioner. Yeah, I would love to do this again.
Yeah, we'll plan on it here real soon. But brother Love, I love you. Thank you for your time. Give your family a big hug and kiss for me, and give your team a big hug and kiss for me. All the amazing people that work for you. Good, continued best wishes in the season. You guys are doing great. It's a grind. People don't realize, boy, the time you guys put in and what a grind it is. But man, people are blessed to have you around them and to kind of lead them. So. Love you, man, and we're going to do this again soon. So please, please, please enjoy the new year. As we always say, triadoxically, enjoy the new year filled with health, happiness, and hope. And I think that biggest word is hope. And I think you give everybody hope around you. So thanks, brother Love.
I love you, brother Love. Thanks for giving me a chance to do this with you today.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, buddy.